The smartest people in the room. We are so glad you are here with us, and just by showing up today, you are already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, we're thrilled to present two of the most creative and colorful guests we've ever had, and I promise you, you will leave today smarter and more inspired than you arrived. More on that in a moment. Before we get started, let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. But the second reason is a bit more nuanced. Most of you know that I am a music industry headhunter. I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. And in this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your friends, and make some new ones. And ask questions of our speakers. We will try to address as many of those as possible during the session. Also, please make sure your chat is set to address speakers and attendees. I want to thank our sponsors, for without their support, we could not keep this free. Thank you to First Horizon Bank, Turnkey ZRG, Four Roses Bourbon, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, Lightning 100, Tennessee Brew Works, Moo TV, Jive Printing, Project Music, and Cushmaster's brand of CBD products. So let's get down to business. In today's host seat, we welcome back an alum of this platform, Dani Deahl. As a prominent figure in music, Dani has been at the forefront of artist discovery and meaningful industry change for over a decade. She currently is editorial director at Output. She's a DJ, a producer, and a public speaker. And she developed the coverage of the intersection of music and technology for The Verge, helmed YouTube series The Future of Music, and is VP for the Recording Academy in Chicago. When performing, she blends trap and house to create bass-forward sets that are technically savvy and high energy. As an artist herself, Dani has released trap, twerk, and hard-hitting house with labels like Dim Mak, Monster Cat, Flamingo, CR2, and Armada. She's also been the subject of 2 documentaries, toured extensively across the globe, played festivals like Spring Awakening, Lollapalooza, and EDC, venues like Wrigley Field, hosted her own terrestrial radio show in Spain and the Canary Islands, and has been an official Red Bull DJ. She's headlined with or been direct support for artists like Alice in Wonderland, Valentino, Khan, Cruella, Diplo, Steve Aoki, Nervo, Yellow Claw, and countless others. Dani's held editorial positions with Nylon Magazine and DJ Mag. She's also a prominent expert on the topics of gender equality in music and marketing for musicians, with speaking engagements at TEDx, Spotify for Artists, Medem, Mondo New York, and dozens of other high-profile industry outlets and conferences. In 2020, she partnered with Bands in Town and Twitter to launch Net.work, a Twitch festival dedicated to unrepresented acts and dance. Wow, what a bio. And I can go on and on and on. Guys, we have a real rock star with us today. And joining Dani as today's featured guest is Dimitri Vitsa. Yes, it rhymes with pizza. Born in Nashville, Dmitri moved to New York as a teen, where he busked in the subways while studying music at the Fame High School for Music and Arts. After earning his business degree, he leaned into his entrepreneurial bent and launched Rock, Paper, Scissors in 1999. His vision was to combine cutting-edge technology and deep organic storytelling to help clients crystallize their missions in compelling ways and amplify them in innovative ways. He continues to lead the company from music to tech and into other fields that are changing the world every day. When others told him that the company he envisioned would not succeed in college town Bloomington, Indiana, Dmitri took that as a challenge and has built a collaborative team that leans into the Midwestern ethic of hard work, warmth, and caring. Dmitri explores the seismic shift shaking up the music and tech with his weekly Music Tectonics podcast and the annual Music Tectonics conference. He can also be found speaking on stage at conferences ranging from South by Southwest to Music Biz and on new approaches to publicity, innovation, and resourcefulness. Please welcome these two rock stars to the smartest people in the room. Please take it away, Dani.
Whew, quite the introduction. One minor, I gotta update my website, I suppose, but I'm no longer the VP of the Chicago chapter, but as of this year, I'm the president of the Chicago chapter for the Recording Academy for the Grammys. Yes, really excited about that. And I do see that we have some fellow Grammy folks in chat. Michael Winger was the executive director for the San Francisco chapter for the Academy for quite some time. So hello to all my fellow Grammy folks. And Dimitri, is always such a pleasure to talk to you. It's been a minute. We used to talk all the time and see each other quite frequently pre-pandemic. And now I get to see you inside of a stereo on a TV screen with a little bit of static. I think you're coming in sort of clearly.
We got to get out of this thing. Here we go.
That's so cool. And I'm really excited to have the tables turned, as it were, because normally you're interviewing me, or if we're just having a casual conversation when we run into each other at some event. And now I actually get to grill you a little bit,
Yikes.
which is fun. It's going to be light. It'll be good. But first and foremost, this sounds like a basic question, but I don't know the answer to this myself. How did you even get into PR, especially as someone who's from, as Tom mentioned, Indiana?
Well, it's a long story. It begins a long, long time ago. So I got into PR through music. Obviously, I grew up playing music, and one of my early careers was doing PR for a record distributor in Portland, Oregon. I moved to Portland, Oregon after college, and I had been doing some nonprofit work, actually, and I used music in workshops to teach about cultural differences. I was always interested in how sound was made, and was exploring different musical instruments and sounds. I guess I should back it up. I spent my teenage years in Queens, in New York City, and I would go to the public library and check out the craziest music. It was my version of crate digging. It was actually cassettes. I would check out cassettes from the library, and I remember finding things like instrumental folk music from Croatia, and then like Fela Kuti, the founder of Afrobeat. And so I got really interested in how these sounds were made. Well, fast forward to post-college, and I worked in the nonprofit world in Portland, and there was a distributor there, Allegro, which is no longer around, but they distributed a lot of independent record labels, and they had a lot of international music. They knew that I was interested in international music just from the Portland scene, friends of friends. And they recruited me in when they started a publicity department. So I knew nothing about PR, but I knew a bit about music. And so I used kind of the same types of storytelling techniques that I used in these workshops, where I was teaching people about music across cultures, to actually write press releases and to start getting national public radio stories, and eventually New York Times and Rolling Stone and Pitchfork and so forth, and built up our the rock, paper, scissors business around helping publicize international artists, lots of African and Latin and Middle Eastern and music from all over the place. So I kind of fell into PR, but I was just, it came from the music. It came from this deep passion in music and telling stories through music. And I realized that there was this opportunity to help artists translate their stories into press stories, taking the root of their music, their cultures, their histories, and helping them kind of just get on the map in terms of media coverage.
So when did the switch happen in terms of the focus of your company? Because it sounds like you started out more on the artist side of things, but RPS as a firm is known for representing music tech clients, which is an incredibly specific niche, but there's a tremendous need for it. When did that transition happen, and how did that transition happen?
So about a decade ago, I started my own music tech startup. I saw everything getting digitized around me, and I thought, this is going to happen with PR too. So I had a robust, decent business doing PR for artists and labels and festivals. But I wondered, as I watched, things like digital stream, first downloads and then digital streaming come into play, I thought, PR is probably going to get displaced at some point. Maybe I should be a part of that instead of the victim of it. So I started a company that's still running to this day called StoryAmp, storyamp.com, which is an automated music PR platform. So bands to this day can still put in their tour dates and they automatically get sent out to relevant journalists. So if you had like a 30-day tour, just in a couple hours, you could line up all your PR, not in terms of like all your coverage, but at least getting the word out in just an hour or two, get your bio and all that stuff onto the website on storyamp.com. And I kind of opened it up to pretty much anyone. And what I found was that I got more attention for doing PR for StoryAmp than StoryAmp exploding in growth. So we started getting kind of conversations started happening with other music tech companies who are like, wait, you got this Billboard piece, you got this article, how do we get press like that for our music tech companies? And so we started working with CD Baby, actually was the first company that approached us. I met the CEO at the time, Tracy Maddox, at South by Southwest while I was promoting StoryAmp, and we got into a conversation, and naturally it led to PR, and we started working with CD Baby all those years ago. And then the next year we got one more music tech company, and then the next year maybe a couple of more, and then as of now we've kind of let the artist festival label side of what we do kind of fade away as we kind of double down on the niche of working with music tech companies.
And I was a music tech journalist, as you're well aware, during my time at The Verge, and we had a lot of communication during those days. And you always managed to land stories with me because RPS has a very unique approach to how you pitch your clients and your stories. Could you talk a little bit about what makes your approach special and what works for RPS?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, those were great days, and appreciate all the opportunities we had to work together. And the truth is, you worked with a lot of our team too, which is super cool. We're a team of 18, so it's not even me that's frequently reaching out to journalists at this point. Yeah, so when we worked with artists, I found that talking to artists and helping them really call their story was a significant piece of the process. Oftentimes, somebody, a label or an artist, would hand you a finished biography or press release and say, I don't think that's the whole story. We would really like pull the thread of curiosity with artists. And we would find that we were able to identify stories that they didn't think were stories. They took things for granted, or there were things that maybe they didn't think were relevant to their career or to their professional life that to us became really an important part of the narrative. So we did that with artists for so many years, so that when we started working with companies, we decided that it was the same thing, really. It was really like, what makes us curious? What gets us excited about what they're talking about, and asking enough questions to the point where we could contextualize things in a more interesting way. So over the course of this period of 20 years now that we worked on, we've come up with kind of a model that we call the RPS model. And it's 3 phases that we do. There's the crystallization, there's the articulation, and there's amplification. Most people think it's the amplification, like it's all about just shouting out there whatever the information is. But if you don't do these earlier steps, I think you miss opportunities. We like to hand media and journalists pretty well thought out narratives before we're even pitching them on something. We want them to be able to figure out what the kind of the sticky factor is, what's that essence of the cool thing that's new or newsworthy before we even pitch it to them. So that crystallization piece is something we've always kind of done on our own, but we've started to now use that as a separate kind of a separate service that we can offer people too, where we're really saying, before we even talk about getting a PR retainer or whatever, let's go through a process. How do you fit into the larger landscape? Who are your competitors? What differentiates you? What's your origin story? What are some of the potential opportunities here that you haven't even tapped into from a business perspective, let alone from a storytelling and press perspective? So a big chunk of it is this crystallization, articulation, amplification component. And but then from there, there's the tactical stuff of what we call pushy diplomacy. You never want to be, you kind of want to be relentless, but you want to do it in a way so that journalists don't feel like you're being a jerk. And so it's always walking the line of being present, being available, having fast response times, being comprehensive, being professional, but at the same time, it's okay to follow up, to keep following up, to follow up in different ways and so forth. So those are kind of the 2 sides, kind of a philosophical one, and then some of the tactical stuff.
Could you give an example of a client that you worked with where you were able to pull out or crystallize a story that the company had not thought to bring to the surface, or a client where you were able to take a facet of what they were doing and make it really compelling, even if they believed it was not at the forefront of what they were doing?
I mean, we're really doing it like all the time. Like if
Sure.
we're
I would
talking
just like
about,
to have
yeah,
something
yeah, yeah.
tangible.
I'm going to go back to CD Baby just because we worked with them for so long, and some of the, sometimes with the current clients, we don't necessarily want to articulate exactly the strategy before it actually kind of plays out in the press. But since we've been working with CD Baby for so long, I mean, when we started with them, first of all, they've got the word CD in their title, right? But by the time we had started working with them almost a decade ago, they were already a digital company. Sure, they still were strong in physical distribution, but they had this whole tech stack of offerings that they had. Obviously they're a leader on the digital distribution side in terms of first downloads and then streaming. Actually, even before that, I mean, one of the things I like to say is they were the first way in which artists could take a credit card to sell CDs on Amazon, right? Because you couldn't just send an independent artist couldn't just put their music on Amazon in the early days. So CD Baby helped independent artists get on there. And this was before the PayPal days, let alone before the Venmo days or the Cash App or any other kind of wallets at this point. This is early in the process. So if you think about like, what's the philosophy behind doing that, helping an independent artist get into a major marketplace, they basically followed that path all the way along the way. But the thing is, they weren't telling the market about it at the time. They were telling their existing user base, and they had hundreds of thousands of users at that point. They had people know they're kind of like a icon of email marketing. They had a strong email list and always have, and blog and podcast and all that kind of stuff, but they weren't really telling the story wider. So part of it was having a conversation with them to say, wait a second, does anyone else do this? Does anyone else do that? Does anyone do this? You realize that, they first of all, historically, they did all these things, helping you sell your CDs directly, helping you get your CDs on Amazon, helping you get your music onto iTunes, helping you get your music onto Spotify, and then monetizing on YouTube, and then doing other types of publishing administration stuff with their partnership with Songtrust. All those things. As you tell the story in that way, you can see that they have a kind of a dedication towards monetization for independent artists that wasn't present if you just think of them as a distributor, especially if you're thinking about them as a physical distributor. So it's through those conversations with them we figured out, how we could tell a much bigger story than just what is their latest offering or their price. In fact, at one point we did some trading cards with them at South by Southwest that were used to educate artists around what the different ways they could monetize were. And so part of the point there was to sort of not just educate the artists about the specific things, but to show that there's all these monetization streams. And if these people who are educating you about this are also the ones that offer those services, it then starts to change the narrative and change the story there as well. So I don't know if that's quite a good example, but that's what comes to mind first.
No, that's amazing. And you're such a diamond for having such a deep understanding of the space and putting such an emphasis on knowledge and education. Because as someone who was in the space writing about music technology from a very knowledgeable perspective, one of the ways that I butted heads with PR folks a lot, yourself excluded, was that they were representing clients and pushing a pre-approved press release, but didn't have any knowledge about the topic beyond what was in the formatted email that they sent me. Whereas with RPS, I felt very comfortable going back and asking more nuanced and in-depth questions that I knew would be answered for me.
I mean, I love to hear that, especially because I know you were working with our publicist before you and I met at all and really interacted. It just makes me, I don't know how other entrepreneurs in the room feel that as you build a team and you see them kind of embodying what you were hoping that people would see in the company is just so meaningful. And to have such a great group of people who are such strong learners, lifelong learners that are always picking stuff up, because a lot of them are learning PR, but they're also learning about the music industry and music innovation and tech and investment and now blockchain and rights management and so many other things. It's quite a rabbit hole. So I love it when I hear from folks that are on the receiving end, like you as a journalist, hearing that the team is really embodying what I hope they would.
They are.
Yeah.
So who are some of your clients these days, and what do those companies do?
So we've got quite a wide variety of clients. We have about 20 at a given time at this point. We've kind of grown quite a bit in the last year. I think digital music is kind of exploding. And if you go to the resources section of our website, which I think has already been shared in the chat. Sorry, I can't actually talk and check the chat at the same time, but I see there's a lot going by. So we'll have to maybe come back. Somebody can flag me on some stuff. But we've got a wide variety of clients. We work with Airbit right now, which is a beats marketplace. They're super awesome, and they're bringing in like a lot of new producers who are creating new revenue streams because they've or creating their first revenue streams really because of having that kind of marketplace. We work with Avid Pro Tools, so everyone knows Pro Tools from being kind of the long-standing leading DAW, digital audio workstation, but they also have other products like Sibelius notation system. They have hardware for both studios and live music as well. So Bandlab is another client of ours, which is a mobile music making app. Man, I feel like I'm about to give you a laundry list, but I'm trying to give you some variety as well. There's a company called Fave, which was the winner of the Music Tectonics startup competition. And they were purely somebody that listened to the Music Tectonics podcast, which I think we're gonna get into later, Jaquel, the founder. And then she applied for our contest. She won the contest. It was an audience vote from our conference attendees. We now work with her as a result, or post being a winner of the competition. She ended up getting her rounds of investment, including from Hybe and some labels and other places. And so it's a fandom platform basically where fans can engage with creating content around their favorite artists, interacting with artists, and eventually monetizing the stuff that they create along with their favorite artists. So that's just, I don't know, I could go on and on, but those are some examples.
That's amazing. And a perfect segue to talk about Music Tectonics Conference, which you briefly touched on. And that is a conference that you founded a couple of years ago. The next one is actually coming up at the end of October. Before we get into what the conference actually is, I feel like it's really important to talk about the first year of the conference and what happened and what you were able to do to save it in the last minute. It's a wonderful story, and it really speaks to your resourcefulness and your attitude of get her done, if you'd like to share.
Thanks, Dani. Yeah, we started Music Tectonics in 2019. We can get into more detail, but it's a music tech conference, broadly defined. Music tech's broadly defined for us. Yeah, the first year we selected LA specifically because seems like at that point, just a couple of years ago, it's gotten even more so now, but at that point we saw this convergence. Record labels were kind of expanding there, moving offices there. Streaming services were moving offices there. Social media companies are based there. There's some hardware companies, a lot of VR and mixed reality, a lot of gaming companies. And of course, it's Hollywood, right? So you've got the TV and film. So there's this crazy convergence of all these different areas. And we just thought that would be a great spot to bring all these things that were emerging together. So that first year was in LA. I know we've heard a lot about the forest fires this year out west and in the Northwest. Well, in that year, our venue was meant to be in a place that ended up being in the evacuation zone for the brush fires of that year. So was the hotel where my team and many attendees were staying. So we found out that fire broke out like 24 hours, maybe 48 hours before our conference was set to start. So we were already in LA, and we basically found out that we were in the evacuation zone. So we had to find a totally different venue within 24 hours, get the word out to all of our attendees. Unfortunately, it was on the other side of town. The venue was originally going to be the Skirball Cultural Center, which is leaning kind of towards the west side. We ended up getting, the venue we found was a Sheraton that was downtown. So if you know LA, it really matters where things are. Everyone's got an opinion. I remember that first year, I'd ask everybody in LA, so should we do it in this part of town, should we do it in that part of town? Nobody agreed. Nobody was happy with any single location. So we ended up trying to get a little bit close to the middle, but in the end, we just had to go with where the winds literally blew us to a different venue. So of course, the next year there was a pandemic. So first year we had fires, second year we had a pandemic, but you've all had the pandemic too. So and
Third
more
time's
fires.
the charm. But
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
is the one that's coming up is it virtual again, or is it
So I actually wrote a piece in Billboard magazine a couple of months ago about the hybrid model that we're using. And also I was kind of saying, I think this is before the variants emerged. I was basically saying, I think that the model for music industry events, I didn't know necessarily about festivals and concerts because it's a whole different thing, but for music industry events should be hybrid. And what we've chosen to do is most of the value in terms of programming, panels and keynotes, and even networking is happening online, October 25th through 27th. But we are doing an in-person component because when we had to decide what to announce, we weren't sure. And we thought there's probably actually some of our sponsors and others were saying, I can't wait to travel. I can't wait to be in person. And this was months off. So what we're doing is November 2nd, a week after our conference, we're doing a series of in-person events in Santa Monica by the ocean. So there's less likely to be, I think, fires right there. There's so much water and wind and well, I guess wind is not always a good thing for fires, but there's sand. It's hard to catch sand on fire. So we're actually taking over the carousel at the Santa Monica Pier, which is, I know, a non-traditional venue, but it kind of goes with the spirit of Music Tectonics. We try to—
You non-traditional, never.
It's the most crazy pants venue I could think of in LA. And again, we wanted to be close to the ocean to be away from fires, but also, I mean, it's an inside and outside venue. So if people are more comfortable networking outside, there's that. And then later that day and that evening, we're taking over a co-working space nearby, also in Santa Monica, that also has an outdoor rooftop section and nearby outside meeting space and so forth. So, but not to overemphasize, because really all the programming is happening online using a couple different great platforms that we love, both for the ease of use for attendees, for networking, and then part of it is also in the metaverse. We use a venue called Deahl World. So you actually come in as an avatar, you have spatial audio on, and you can walk around and talk to people. I see people in the chat here who've been in there. And also, we're going to build out our expo hall in the metaverse as well, which we think will be a better digital expo experience. We've gone to all the other music industry conferences, and we're not really thrilled with what we've seen with how companies can interact with people who are interested in checking out demos or slideshows or things like that. So we like this avatar approach. They're going to have built out expo booths, and you'll be able to interact with people, whether it's people from the company or other peers that are attending the conference and so forth as well.
That's amazing. What are some of the topics and some of the guest speakers that people can expect at this year's Music Tectonics?
I gotta open up my list because we're still planning a lot, but one of them, I'll just riff here. I'm probably gonna miss. Well, there's gonna be a lot of sessions, so I'll riff on this. One of them is going to be on digital collectibles, and the focus is not just like what are NFTs. The focus is specifically on interoperability. How can all these various industries that are converging around digital collectibles create something that's interoperable? And my vision is, what if you can buy something that's music related that not only can you say maybe listen to a music track, but maybe you're in a game like Minecraft and you can wear something that represents your fandom for this artist. But then you come into something like this in Zoom and you can have a filter that's music related, or you're on Instagram and you can do a filter there, maybe a virtual background here, a filter there. So I'm curious to see if there can be a conversation about how you can, as a fan, purchase something in one place, but somehow it's transferable and you use it. I mean, it's just like a t-shirt, right? You wouldn't go to a concert, buy a t-shirt, and then hang it up at the amphitheater at the venue, right? You bring it with you. You wear it when you're jogging, you wear it when you're going to work, you wear it when you're going to a bar. I think digital collectibles need that to really express people's identity and their fandom. They really need to have that transferability of using it. So that's just one panel. Another one we're working on is the future of social music. We think that there has not really been a kind of a music creation meets social experience that's really broken through. Like if you think about TikTok or Instagram, even YouTube, you've got this social video component. Imagine if there was a space that was as active and as exciting, as creative and prolific as those social video platforms, but specifically for music. You might say SoundCloud was kind of getting there at one point, but it's not quite as social as TikTok, and it's maybe less social than it used to be, as well as they've had to pivot to make their business model work as well. So the future of social music is an interesting one. The other thing I should say is that, you know, when we started the conference in 2019, there was a heavy emphasis on innovations in the recorded side of the music industry. So streaming and YouTube and online video, all that kind of stuff was fair game. We had a little bit of VR, that sort of thing. Something that we added in partially as a result of speakers that came. Mark Mulligan from Media came and was usually the most popular speaker at our conference. And he talked at the first conference, as well as at online events that we've done since then, was that the music creation software platform technology world is a lot of the future of the music industry, that it's the top of funnel for the entire record industry. If you if you think about A&R and so forth, if you can go straight to the place where people are making music for the first time, and there's more and more apps, websites, platforms that are doing that kind of hold that community of musical creators, then you're pretty much feeding every future artist that's going to be putting out music. So this year, we're doing a heavy emphasis of kind of that convergence. You hear me say convergence a lot, that convergence of the music creator space along with the record industry. Of course, there's also a live streaming component. There's a VR component. We do have collectibles. We'll talk about blockchain, all that kind of stuff too. So we have companies like Native Instruments, Bandlab, Lander, who are a part of the conference this year, which is kind of new for us and exciting, because we think that and this is for those of you who are in the traditional music industry, pay attention, because I think this shift, if you think this growth of independent distribution, that's really where you see these quotes about, oh, there's 40,000 tracks, no, there's 50,000, wait, there's 60,000 tracks a day getting delivered on Spotify. Those numbers are going to keep going up, but in addition to that, you're going to see more and more musical creators, and it's going to transform how we think about the entire music industry. So I don't know, there's some of them. I could go on and on.
No, that is a nice setup for the next question, which is really just delving into what you think is top of mind for music tech in the next 5 to 10 years. What is happening now in terms of innovation? What should people be paying attention to? What is accelerating?
Cool. So I think that first one is, yeah, kind of my top of mind one is music creations in the hands of the masses, and just the fact that we're going to see so much, not only just quantity, but also quality. Like we're going to, like how we define what a song is and what music is, what genres are. We're going to see new genres emerging at a much more rapid pace than we've ever seen before. As people in different pockets of the country or in the world get access to tools, they're new ideas. People that had never had the ability to kind of create a full, finished, completed work will be doing so. In addition, the tools that they'll be using that are going to be optimizing and making it easy for them are also going to shift the sound of things. I mean, you and I have had tons of conversations about artificial intelligence and its role in music creation. Our first year, we had a session called AI's Got Talent, which was all about, how artificial intelligence was being used to create music or mess with audio and so forth. So I think we'll see, as a result of that, not just quantity, but also shifts in music. I mean, we're already seeing it in terms of these social platforms changing the length of songs or changing people's attention span for what part of the song is relevant and so forth. Or
right, or writing a song specifically so that there is a hook that is TikTok compatible.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or getting their 30 seconds in for their Spotify monetization,
Yep.
like putting out albums with shorter songs, because why not? It increases the number of fishing lines you have out there in the monetization world. So music creation in the masses, we talked a lot about that. We've touched on the virtual world. I think music in virtual worlds is going to continue to be interesting. I think everyone assumed that the virtual experience was primarily going to be the fan going into a virtual world and seeing something or interacting like a concert. But I think there's two things that I think are different with virtual. One is the artist is becoming the virtual avatar. And I think that is a more significant change at this very moment in time. People are getting to experience a new art form where artists can wear the gear to represent themselves with the best kind of computer generated graphics that movie studios didn't have 5 years ago. Now they can do it in real time, and they can I'm thinking about companies like Wave and you know, how The Weeknd did the TikTok thing, you know, Lil Nas X having a giant avatar performing inside Roblox, things like that. So it's not just like an alternative to the live stream experience where fans go in as an avatar and interact in a playful way and see a video screen of a live stream facsimile of a concert, but it's actually like it really has stepped into the art of VR. So so that's one part. The other part about music in virtual worlds is you see interactivity in virtual worlds, whether it's something as simple as Beat Saber, where you're playing a musical game, or something more complex like Tribe XR, where you can actually learn how to DJ inside of VR.
Oh my
Or
gosh, I am sorry to interrupt you,
yeah,
but
please.
Tribe XR is one of the most underrated startups, specifically because not only does it let you DJ on an actual Pioneer DJ interface, but someone else can log into the same session and you can be next to another avatar and you and the other person can go B2B on the same set of virtual software.
Yeah, it's so wicked, and you can just imagine where this is going to go. Like DJing is the first step, right? But what comes next? What other instruments are people going to play or learn through Tribe XR? We had Tom, the founder and CEO, on the Music Tectonics podcast, and he was talking about how companies can actually use their technology to A and B test products. So when they're looking at actual physical products, they can actually like have people try them out before they actually go through the process of setting up manufacturing and so forth. So there's this crazy, again, this convergence, this intersection of hardware and VR that that's super intriguing as well.
Yeah, and also speaking to that, I think we talked about this the other day, but I DJ'd at an art gallery, and this touches on a whole lot of things that you previously talked about, but I DJ'd, this sounds like a Mad Lib sentence. I DJ'd at an NFT gallery and simultaneously in the metaverse, which was amazing because we had the IRL crowd in the gallery, but then there was a screen set up so you could see the digital replication of the gallery and all of the avatars that logged in and were dancing to the virtual version of me behind the virtual DJ decks.
That looked wicked. I went on there and saw what it looked like. That looked so much fun. And that, I mean, that's the thing about it. I think some people are concerned about, like, what is this taking over? What are we competing with? Or what's happening to our attention? But when you get to that point where you talk about that level of creativity, you know, whether it's the Tribe XR stuff we were talking about, where people are learning stuff, or just your experience and just feeling like, wow, this opens up the opportunity for more engagement and creativity. Which I think would go to my next point about like other themes that are emerging. I think digital music has allowed music, I think, to cross into more spaces, and it could be technology like VR, but it's also more industries. And so I get the sense that, like, when we were in the physical market with vinyl or cassettes or CDs or 8-tracks or whatever, you know, getting music to and from different places in itself was kind of a thing, you know, like it wasn't always easy, right? But not only is it easy for the consumer to download or stream music and get access to this celestial jukebox, but it also means that there's new use cases that emerge, that music is so mobile and so ethereal that it can be placed in places that it never was before. So I think that's partly why we're seeing the explosion in things like fitness, mindfulness, health, education, senior care, furniture. Like we've seen like pieces of furniture, IKEA and Sonos put out a lamp that plays music. The whole smart speakers thing too, you know, like the whole ambient technology thing. Now that all music is in this kind of digital format, it just makes it easier to go into all these other verticals and industries and use cases. And as a result, I think people have to start realizing that there are these new revenue streams. I know they're still small and growing for many artists and for many and in many of these new industries and new use cases. But I think that's what it is. Like, less money is being left on the table because people are experiencing music in totally new ways. It's not about a transaction of purchasing this thing that you can listen to in your home, but it's really about how music is getting integrated into all these other spaces. It's almost like when I first noticed that synchronization with film and TV was exploding, like the cool TV shows and the cool films were using music as a new creative, more expressive piece. It wasn't just orchestral all the time, but there was like, oh wait, that's a cool band. Wait, I've heard that band. I want to hear that band, whatever it is, or it has this other vocabulary of emotional evocativeness, that got used. The same thing is happening. Like, now your workouts can have a whole other emotional side because of the soundtrack that goes with it. So that's another interesting theme. Should I keep going on themes? I don't know. You're in charge.
Well, no, we're doing great on time. Someone did point out in chat, yes, a Swedish House Mafia is making home studio furniture with IKEA. I was very interested in that announcement. But another topic that parlays a bit off of introducing new revenue streams is the incorporation of blockchain in novel ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think you actually were on our panel in 2019, which we called the blockchain cage match. And yes, that's kind of bad memories, right? That turned kind of into a cluster F. But we were willing to take the risk because it was a moment in time where there was a lot of interest from founders and startups around doing unique and creative and solving certain problems with blockchain. But the industry the music industry wasn't really there yet. Like, there were people who were saying, yeah, this is where it's going to go. But there was no way. I mean, like, the classic thing was, somebody would say, music is always going to be on the blockchain. You're going to be able to track every time somebody plays or uses or uploads your music. And as a result, you're going to get paid, or you're going to be able to track all the splits, or if rights get sold, we're instantly going to know. And then there were a lot of folks in the industry who were saying, yeah, I mean, we get it on paper, but it's very hard to figure out where are the dangling wires that you can connect up to an existing streaming service. Who's going to be controlling and inputting that information from the beginning? Artist versus publisher versus record label. And how does that information get updated? Sure, we know it can be updated, and we know it's immutable. So anyway, there were a lot of conversations that just made it sound like, man, it's going to be a long way before that actually happens. But what I've seen in the past year is that there are use cases that are emerging that don't require it all to be connected up from day one. Obviously, somebody's already mentioned in the chat, we talked about digital collectibles. NFTs have been a huge explosion for paying attention to how this can actually work. And I think one of the main reasons it works is because these things are popping up independently.
Dimitri, could you back up a second and explain what an NFT is for those who aren't aware?
I can try. You could probably explain better than me, Dani, but it stands for non-fungible token, which we always, at my house, I've got a 12-year-old, we're always saying, is it fungible? Is it fungible? We have a lot of fun with fungible. But basically, let's speak most broadly about it. I cannot imagine that there's anyone in the room who has not heard about NFTs, but we're going to go anyway.
Well, I think a lot of people have heard the word NFT, but might not actually understand what an NFT is on a fundamental level.
So at a fundamental level, an NFT is a digital representation of claiming ownership of a digital item. And that's basically it at the most fundamental level. The easiest kind of way to sort of explain it is, imagine baseball trading cards. You can have a bunch of them. You can have very rare ones. Somebody can own one. Somebody can buy one. You don't own the baseball player. You don't own the games that they scored the points, scored any points in, or hit any hits in, or whatever. All you actually own is this sort of representation of this idea of this person, this identity. And it doesn't have to be a person. It can be a thing too. It could be a concept. So for example, you could have a digital trading card that is associated with a festival moment. I mean, it really blew up in sports too. It could be a play in a basketball game, and whoever owns the rights to that video of that festival moment or that game moment in a sport environment can basically say, we're going to sell X number of these. These are the official ones. We're going to sell one and we're going to auction them off, or we're going to sell 10,000 of them. And so you can choose a lot of different things about how that's structured, how many there are, and so forth. Some can be more rare than others. And then on top of that, once you buy it and you own it, it does use blockchain in the sense that you then know the origin of it and who owns it, but then also you can sell it on a secondary market. And so once you sell it, you can also build into the digital contract around the NFT that the person who is selling it can make some money, but the original owner or the original creator can also make a percentage of money every time it gets sold. So there's this rich secondary market as well. So people sometimes collect stuff because they're fans. Sometimes they collect stuff because they're kind of prospecting and they're hoping to make more money off of it. And usually they're kind of doing both. But it's kind of like Pokemon cards, you know, like it's a game. You can interact with a community of other NFT fans or other music fans or sports fans or whatever. And then you can also have some interactivity between the NFTs. Is that a good enough fundamental explanation, Dani? Is that what you were going for?
Yeah, I think that breaks it down. The TLDR is that they're digital collectibles that are tied to blockchain, which means that there's essentially provenance tied to them. So I've talked to a lot of people that have not bought into NFTs yet because they say, well, isn't it just a JPEG or a GIF, and can't I duplicate it and essentially own the same thing? But I tried to tell them, well, you could have an original Prince poster that you got when you attended the show. You could probably also buy a replication of that poster, and they would look essentially the same, but one has immense value to it because of the provenance of it, right? And so the blockchain provides the provenance for this digital art so that you, the fan, know that what you have is one of TK. And those are all of the things that exist in the world, online or IRL.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons it's taken off so well is because it reintroduces the idea of scarcity that we lost when physical product went to digital, or more importantly, when songs went to streaming, where it felt like, well, you didn't have to finish the song, you don't have to know who the artist is, you have access to everything. You know, I understand why the industry and specifically streaming services went this pathway to create a model for monetization, but it did kind of cut off the idea of scarcity. And I mean, we saw stuff even pre-NFT where a single cassette of an album could get sold, right? And for millions of dollars, which is super interesting. But it's cool to see that idea of scarcity come back in because it puts the control back into the artist's hands in a way that has been super challenging as we've moved to digital.
Are there companies that are utilizing NFTs in ways that you think are successful or different, or things that will be sticky for years to come?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think one thing that happens with NFTs that we haven't talked about yet is the collaboration across art forms, right? Like to see visual artists, whether it's digital painters or filmmakers or TV creators or whatever, interacting with music and musicians and doing a collaboration. That is a super cool thing. There has not been a really easy format for visual artists and musicians to collaborate directly. It's always happened in a B2B kind of relationship where somebody's making a film and they need music for something. There's music videos, obviously, but that's really creator centric and you're sort of like, it's a work for hire usually in terms of the video maker and things like that. But to take two totally independent artists and creators and smash them up together and they get to collaborate on something is super cool. We're actually working with a couple of companies that are working in the NFT space. One of them, I'm just going to do a brief shout out, called Hi-Fi Labs, because they have some stuff coming out down the road that I think is going to blow people's minds for some of that collaboration stuff. And it's not just like a visual artist that you've never heard of with a musician. It's where you see other types of creators where you're like, I can't believe they're working together. So keep an eye on Hi-Fi Labs. But the one that I can talk a little bit more about that we're working with is a company called Record Shop, which has no vowels if you're looking it up. And one of the things that they're doing that's really cool is when they do an NFT drop, they're actually dropping a pack. And so you're not just getting a single card, you're getting moments, you're getting songs, you're getting different types of little snippets, which is kind of interesting, because if you're a fan of a particular artist or a festival or of a label, it's not necessarily just the one snippet that you want, not just the video or just the identity of the experience or whatever, the provenance that you were referring to, which could just be just a concept, you know, like a date of a festival or something like that. But you actually can, you know, maybe you get like a lyric sheet, you know, like you get you own the NFT of the handwritten lyrics the first time, and the song, and a video, and a festival moment, and a photo of an instrument or something else like that. And then what's cool about what they're doing is you don't always know what you're going to buy. You know some of what you're going to buy, but you might get some Easter eggs as well. And from there, there's the tradability to get collections. And then there's also some down the road, keep an eye on them, because they'll do some stuff where your NFTs do stuff, unlock other things, and that's super cool as well. So yeah, those are some of my favorites in the moment.
Love it. Loot boxes, but make it blockchain.
Yes, exactly.
That's cool. And I did see a question in chat, which I thought was something that we could address. Let me go back up. Glenn says, how can one use modern marketing and promotion in all of these new avenues?
Whoa, that's a tough one, Glenn. I mean, that's a big question. Just because you say modern marketing and promotion, which could include a lot of things, and all of these new avenues. I don't know what we were talking about at the moment in time. I don't know if you want to chat, Glenn, a little bit more about which avenues you were thinking of. I mean, I think one of the things we talk about at Music Tectonics on the podcast at the conference is how there's no single path to success. That there used to be a very specific kind of supply chain model that kind of led to a marketing and promotion channel and method that, you know, it would change every 5 or 10 years, but, you know, radio promotion had its play, advertising had its place, touring had its place at some point, and so forth. But right now it feels like there are so many different channels, and I think the biggest answer to me, Glenn, is what's the right fit for the artist in terms of where they want to be creative, what represents them well, because some people like visual stuff, some people like audio, some people like writing, some people are into gaming, and some are into cooking, and so you have to kind of like find where's the overlap between your interest and your tribe, your fandom, like who are the you know, the fans that have the same kind of interest as you, but also are gathering in it in a certain place too. But now, I mean, George Schwint is saying that, that maybe they're asking about articulation, crystallization, and the third one was amplification. And so if we apply that to the question, now I got to find the question again. How does one use modern marketing and promotion in all these new avenues? And I mean, I guess if that's what Glenn meant, I would say, like, if you're looking at the new avenues and modern marketing as it relates to crystallization, articulation, amplification, I would say, like, this part about finding the overlap between what you want to do, who you want to be, and your fans is part of the crystallization process. You know, when I was talking about that earlier, I forgot to mention, I oftentimes want to get to the point with artists or with these music tech companies. What is your contribution to the world? What is the thing that you are doing that nobody else is doing, or that fewer doing, or that you want to be known for, or that you want to contribute to the world? And I think that's where the crystallization becomes relevant to all modern marketing and promotion, is to really understand and hit that point home. A lot of times with artists, you know, with companies, we talk about features and differentiation and so forth. With artists, it's much more ethereal. It's much more of an emotional, evocative thing. You can name it though. And once you've named it, I think you can look at sort of how does your marketing efforts embody that crystallized form of what your contribution to the world is. In terms of articulation, if you look at modern marketing and articulation, as a PR company that does a lot of media relations, we're doing it in written form. But in terms of all the things that we've been talking about, trends that are emerging, everything from, NFTs and virtual worlds to music creation, I think articulation can exist in a lot of other formats. It can be visual, video, infographics, graphics, that sort of thing. I mean, some of my favorite marketing things from companies, from technology companies, are when they create an experience that's a standalone like micro website, like where you can go and calculate what your royalties would be if you do this, that, and the label deal analyzer type stuff, or you know, fun things like what Econest used to do, where you would go and you'd punch in or connect your account and find out like recommendations or names for your artist name, or you know, different things like that. That kind of stuff is I think super interesting too when you think about articulation in that way. And then amplification, there's so many opportunities. We do it with traditional media relations, but there's also opportunities in social video, or you know, I want one of my clients to write a song about what they do, and to commission somebody to do a song about it as well. So I mean, there's so many other opportunities. We've done comic books, trading cards, infographics, you know, videos, all that kind of stuff as well. I feel like I'm rambling, Dani. So reel me in.
You're not. I mean, I've said this several times in this conversation, but your company goes above and beyond what most other PR companies do, which is just send a bunch of email blasts and hope that somebody responds. So you tailor the ideas and the experiences around each one of your clients individually, depending on what's best for them. Christina has a question, which I think would be a really great closer. She says, this is for both of us. What is one piece of advice or a life motto you would give for those who want to rise in the industry?
Well, do you want to go first, Dani? I've been doing all the talking.
I will say that I always go back to something that I said in my TED Talk, which is, if you don't ask the question, you'll never know the answer. Essentially, closed mouths don't get fed, right? And we miss out on so many things in life simply because we were too scared to ask, or we didn't think that we were good enough for the opportunity. And you only get to arrive at the opportunity if you put yourself out there and you aren't afraid to ask the question. So be available and make sure that you are not afraid to step up to the plate and to ask for the things that you want in life.
I love it. I love it. I was talking to somebody on our team once about it's okay to ask stupid questions, and there's ways to do it that don't sound stupid as well. So I guess my follow-up,
I'm of the mind that there are no stupid questions.
Well, I think when I say that, I think people think they're stupid questions. I think, you know, people, especially newer people to the industry, less experienced people, you might think that people think they're stupid questions, but I always back up, even with clients where I'm supposed to like have this industry expertise and walk in knowing everything. I'm like, so I'm going to be pitching this to the press, and some of them are not going to know anything about what you do. So I want to hear in your words how you'd explain it to somebody for the first time. And then I get the answer, even if I don't know the answer, and I'm like blaming some stupid person out there that doesn't exist to ask a stupid question. But I would say, just on follow on to yours about asking questions, I think one of the things I've always loved, and it's not specific to the music industry, is understanding like what somebody's passion is. And I'll tell you, some people have it and some people don't. I try to find out if somebody has a passion, and then I try to find what it is. I always am testing my curiosity skills. Like, how can I find out as much as possible from this person at this moment so that I can learn something new, but more than that, understand why it's important to them. And for me, that constantly, that's like a relationship builder anywhere in the industry, or any industry, anywhere on the street. What is their passion, and really truly understand it, and then try to connect it to what they do, like for their fulfillment in life, you know, and understand it. And then that opens up to you also sharing what your passion is and showing your passion. I think one of the biggest mistakes people with less experience have is trying to pretend like they're passionate about something that they're not. and I do believe in fake it till you make it, but I think getting to the essence of what it is that makes you tick and figuring out the right people that have the same synergy is going to help, I think, on the career front as well.
I will say selfishly that is probably the best networking tool anyone can utilize as well, is be curious about the person that you're talking to in a conversation. The more questions you ask about the other person versus talking about yourself, the more you're going to engender that other person to you and have them have a positive outlook toward the conversation when they leave.
Totally, definitely. It's interesting living in the Midwest and working with a mostly Midwestern team, being somebody who was raised by New Yorkers and spent my formative years in Nashville and then New York City. I have more New York in me. And so I talk a lot, I'm loud, but I also have learned to make those moments, create those moments of opening, which is tricky, but it's really interesting to see, even in our, we think of this American identity as a specific thing, but in reality, like all that regional stuff is still super, super relevant and something to be conscious of.
Yeah, and we're at the end of the hour of this very nice talk between two friendly Midwesterners.
I guess I've lived here long enough. You could maybe say that.
You embody it, just own it. You're Midwest at your heart.
I'm a trans-regionalist. Dani, thank you. This has been so awesome. Tom, thank you. The host with the most, bringing in all the great conversations and building such a great community. I love spending time with both of you, anytime, in person, online, in space, in the metaverse. Come to Music Tectonics. I'll put that discount link back in the chat. If anyone has not gotten their ticket yet, this is a special discount link just for folks on this webinar today, or this conversation today. So check it out. And I can't wait to read the chat, Tom. You're gonna have to get me I guess I got to copy this chat before it's gone. It went so fast.
I can forward it to you. Hey, on behalf of the audience, let me say thank you to both of you guys. You are incredibly inspiring and informative and talented. Dani, it's always great to have you on this platform. And Dmitri, you're one of my heroes, and I so appreciate the great work you do for the industry. Keep it up, both of you.
You're my hero.
Well, good. We're in the mutual hero society here today. To the audience, be nice to each other and get a flippin' shot ASAP so you can attend Music Tectonics safely, as well as Americana Music Festival this weekend. All the best to everyone. Be safe.
Thank you.
Bye, thanks.
Bye.